So in this presentation, we're going to look at some of the simple methods that we can use for these to be more effective, to connect with our audience better. And this presentation is largely aimed at technical presentations for engineering and science. So the first thing we'll want to do is be quite clear about the central point or the central message of that whole presentation. And we also want to share that with the audience. We want to start explaining what this point is, and we want to end by reminding the audience that that's what we covered. So we should be able to define this central point as a statement in hopefully one sentence, and there might be one or two characteristic numbers involved in that sentence. So for example, this presentation is about the simple methods that we can use to deliver effective presentations. And in that, we might want to say that there are 5 key points that can be used towards that, for example. Then towards delivering this presentation effectively, towards reducing our amount of nervousness, we can shift our awareness to this one central message. So within ourselves, we can be quite focused on this message, and that helps us reduce our anxiety and how we're looking and sounding, because then we're quite focused on the message. Towards that, we also want to stay connected with the audience. So we need to look at the audience, be aware of their changes in expression, be aware that they might need more emphasis in one area or some other area. So we want to stay connected with that audience and speaking to that audience. We don't want to just be standing there independently of this audience. We don't want to be rattling on about something and the audience is sitting there and trying to follow something. So stay connected with the audience as well. Be aware of their changes in expression. Then, as much as we want to have one central message for the whole presentation, even within a single slide, we want to keep a good focus there. So we want to stick to one main idea per slide, and we want to stay under 1 minute per slide. So we don't want to take a long time for every single slide. And we want at most 5 points of text on a slide. We want to use the heading up there to help the audience keep track of where this fits into the bigger picture. And we want to use graphics and images to connect with that point or emphasize the point. We also don't want to memorize all the text, right? If we do that, that's going to stiffen us up because then we're going to be racing to get through this memory barrier. And after all, we've got all the points on the screen. We can just look at the screen and remember what to say next. So, and that doesn't mean we want to read. We don't want to follow exactly the same text. So we just remind ourselves of the key point, and then we just talk around that. We talk to our audience around these key points. Then towards keeping the slides clear as well, more in terms of the technicality of what's on the screen. Number one, we want to be sure that people seated far away from the screen can still see it clearly. So we want to use simpler, clearer fonts that have at least a minimum size. So the minimum size, for example, around 14 points, so quite different from a Word document or something like that. And we also have to be careful about our font sizes in figures and so on. So if it's an Excel figure, this might look fine to you as the designer of the presentation. But what you'll want to do is change the default sizes. So Excel will give you a certain font size on the axes, which need to be changed when you are using it in a presentation. Also, Excel or whatever program you are using may leave large empty spaces. You'll want to adjust your axis limits so that you get a good view into the curves and the data. And if you have discrete data points, if you have distinct data points rather than a truly continuous curve, and you can only really get continuous curves by generating equations. So if you are not showing equations being generated, if you are not plotting equations, if you are plotting data, you have to show those data points. You can't show a continuous curve when you have discrete data points. So, so that's a bit about figures. Also for tables, you also want to adjust the font size there. Sometimes you can't adjust a font size. Sometimes it's a screenshot from something. Then acknowledge that. Say to the audience, I know you can't see the numbers exactly, but I can tell you the number up here is this value, and you can see the numbers are changing down this way. So acknowledge where the audience can't see something and spend a bit of time telling them what they can't see there. Now, let's look a little bit at PowerPoint, and I'm not going to spend a long time on this. Your version will be different by the time you see this and so on. But I guess the most important thing is that's where you start your slideshow, or you just hit F5. And if I hit F5, now you see that my screen is it's in the wrong mode. So if I am looking at my laptop screen and this is what's showing up on the presentation screen behind me, I need to know to go and swap my presentation mode, right? So you always want to check that the audience is seeing what you want them to see in the right mode. And let's get back to the points. Yeah, so make sure you are in the right presentation mode. You also have available that you can create these the voiceovers and video content. So if you want to record a voiceover, then you can do that here, record audio, or you can do screen recordings if you have software that you want to demonstrate. Quite often, the software won't work on the PC that you're using in a presentation. So sometimes there might be network difficulties, or it turns out that the organizer wants you to use their laptop. So be sure that you have your recording beforehand and it's integrated properly. And you'll want to check that it's working at the venue, at the date, and all that. So be wary of that. I do find there are some nice transitions. So between slides, you can use a transition. I quite like the push transition. But other than that, I really avoid using animations. And it can be quite frustrating to have to watch a presentation where someone has loaded it with all these impressive animations. And then you have to wait for the animation to load. And sometimes they want to skip ahead or go back to something. Then they have to scroll through all those animations. So I would say avoid using animations at all. Let's switch back. Right. Okay, so before even developing the presentation, think about the audience that's going to be at that event. So what types of people are there? What are they interested in? Would they be interested in your central message? So if you already have your central message, do you need to rephrase it for that audience? Then again, don't bother reading the title, right? If you go back and look at how we started this presentation, I didn't bother reading the title because I know it's on the screen and the people there can read it. So I just talk around it and explain a bit about what this is going to be about. And especially never go and read the whole things on the screen. It's really irritating. And you're sitting there wondering, well, I can read this. Why are you reading it for me? So just talk around all the points. And importantly, are you able to get through this presentation in time, right? Have respect for that audience. They are there and they expect to finish this because they have to go somewhere and do something else afterwards. Also, you may have other presenters coming in after you. So show respect for the audience and the other people who are presenting and stick to the time that you have available. Do you even know what time is available? Do you know how much of that available time is presentation time and how much of that time is question and answer time? And you should be more interested in the questions and answers. You should leave enough time for questions and answers. Then do you know what's available in the venue? So do you know what laptop is available? Do you know what operating system? Do you know if there's a mic available? So are all your assumptions met by the infrastructure in that venue? So always get there a little ahead of time. There'll be technical staff available who want you to come there and try your slides out. So go test everything works, especially if you have any embedded audio and video. Just check that that works with the setup there. If you are teaching remotely or if you are presenting remotely, make sure you are in the right presentation mode, that the audience can hear you, that you're not on mute and things like that. So some basic things there. Then in terms of basic manners, right? After you're introduced, so typically somebody is going to say who you are and why you're there. Then you'll want to thank that person first before saying hello to your audience. And we've talked about sticking to the time limit. And then connected to the time limit, there's typically someone at the venue who's going to prompt you, who's going to say 5 minutes left or whatever it is. So you want to acknowledge that. So just nod towards the person. Don't break what you are doing. Don't get so distracted by that that you lose your train of thought. So just nod smoothly at the person and carry on with what you're saying. If you become aware, right, in spite of all your preparations, for whatever reason, you are still running out of time, then look at how to skip to the end. So if you've got slides coming up and you can just put the slide up, say to the audience, on the slide, I wanted to talk about X or Y, and then skip past it. So you've flagged in the audience mind that there is this topic available and they can raise that in the question time. So you can try and use the question time if you are running out of time during the presentation time. So still try to meet the available end of presentation time by skipping through things when you need to. So if you have a chairperson available, don't go and invite questions and answers yourself. That's what the chairperson is there for. Don't steal their job. It's very awkward for the chairperson who's just standing up at the end and wanting to invite the audience and have control of the audience. And you've gone and blurted out, oh, are there any questions? So it's show manners. The people who are experienced at presentations know not to do this. So don't invite the audience to questions and answers. You finish your presentation, thank everyone for listening, and you stop talking. Then at the end of your presentation, try to have your last slide with your email address or your phone number up on the screen as long as you can have it. So while the questions and answers are going on, people want the chance to jot down your email address and connect with you afterwards. So the whole point of this presentation was to connect with people, right? Otherwise, you might as well just go and publish your work in some other medium. But you're standing there because you want to connect with that audience. You want to be available for their questions and answers and to collaborate with them afterwards. Maybe it's a job opportunity afterwards or something like that. Then before you start answering any question, you can ask for clarity. So if you're not too clear about the question or you couldn't hear the questioner for whatever reason, you can ask for them to repeat the question or rephrase the question. And then if you feel that the audience hasn't heard the question, then it's important to repeat the question for the benefit of the audience. Then after you've presented and after you've answered all the questions, still be also generally available in that venue. So there will be people who will want to talk further with you. Maybe they didn't get a chance to ask their question, or they didn't want to ask it publicly, or maybe they want to talk to you about something else. It might be a job offer even. So be available afterwards to talk further to people. And towards that, have your business card ready. You might have a summary of your paper or your piece of work available that you are able to give to other people. So have that all on hand to share with people who are interested. And people might share their contact information with you during or after the presentation. So follow up with that, right? Make a note, have a place where you keep these things carefully. So it's important to keep their contact information carefully so that you can reach out to them afterwards and resume that conversation. Then in your summary, of course, we always want to tell the audience what we told them about and keep to that central point. And so we've talked about the conduct during the presentation and staying simple and clear and all those good things. Thanks very much for listening.